Welcome to Poetry Time. This will be a great way to review some poetic devices and also look at a piece of literature that you can analyze. This is analyzing a poem by Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson was born in 1830 and died in 1886. She was an American poet. So to start out, I'm going to ask you to analyze, predict, and think. We're going to read through a poem by Emily Dickinson together. I'm not going to tell you the title. That is your task. What is this poem about? What might the title be? As we move through this task together and analyze this poem, see how your prediction might change. I like to see it lap the miles and lick the valleys up, and stop to feed itself at tanks, and then prodigious step. Around a pile of mountains and supercilious pier, in shanties by the sides of roads, and then a quarry pair. To fit its sides and crawl between, complaining all the while, in horrid hooting stanza, then chase itself downhill. And neigh like Boanerges, then punctual as a star, stop, docile and omnipotent, at its own stable door. Now write down or think in your head the title of this poem. What is Dickinson writing about? I like to see it lap the miles and lick the valleys up, and stop to feed itself at tanks, and then prodigious step. Whatever she is writing about laps the miles. That means it must cover a far distance rather quickly. It also licks the valleys up. I'm betting this is personification. Remember, that's when you give a human object or a non-human object human characteristics. Or hyperbole, that's extreme exaggeration. Because she's saying that this thing goes fast through valleys quickly. This thing also stops to feed itself at tanks, so it needs food or fuel to run on. It also takes prodigious step. Prodigious is an adjective that means impressive, powerful, and great in size. This thing moves in a powerful way. Prodigious may be a new word. Around a pile of mountains and supercilious pier, in shanties by the sides of roads, and then a quarry pair. This thing moves around mountains. It also looks in a supercilious way. Supercilious is an adjective that would be showing superiority or thinking you are better than someone else. It is looking in a superior way at shanties, little shacks by the sides of the road. This thing seems more powerful and proud than the little shacks. Then the thing pairs, that means cuts through, a quarry. A quarry is a rock formation. To fit its sides and crawl between, complaining all the while, in horrid hooting stanza, then chase itself downhill. This thing is moving through something, fitting itself between the rocks it is cutting through. It is also complaining with a loud sound, horrid hooting stanza. It is speaking in a horrible loud song. Then it chases itself downhill. Think about how something would chase itself downhill. A dog could chase its tail, but then it would be going in a circle. This is going kind of straight down a hill, chasing itself. And neigh like Boanerges, then punctual as a star, stop, docile and omnipotent, at its own stable door. Now, it neighs or makes a loud sound. Boanerges is allusion in this poem. Remember, in poetry or literature, you have allusion, which is referencing another piece of work or a painting or a piece of history in another piece of literature. So this is alluding to or connecting to the Bible. Boanerges was a surname or a last name given to James and John because of their temper. It means sons of thunder. This thing also is on time. Punctual means right on time. Dickinson uses a simile to say, it is on time as a star. Just like we know the exact time the sun will rise and set and be directly overhead, like the time from a sundial. This thing can be depended upon to be right on time. Finally, it stops docile, that means calm and gentle, while at the same time omnipotent. And omnipotent means all-powerful. Perhaps you remember from points of view in literature that there's also a third person omniscient. That means when you have more than one thought or feeling from one character, you have thoughts and feelings of more than one. So when you see omni in a word, it means all. Potent means powerful, so omnipotent is all-powerful. It stops at its own stable door, so it has a place it knows to go. All right, so after reading that and looking at what Emily Dickinson wrote, what do you think the title is? So you may want to write that down. If you haven't already, consult it. Think about what you thought about before. A horse? No, it is not a horse. It is not written about a horse, and that is not the title. The stable door and the neighing made you think of a horse most likely. But remember that poetry is most often more than meets the eye. The poet uses similes, that's where he compares things using like or as, metaphors, where we call something something else, personification, giving an object human characteristics, and other figurative language, like we talked about hyperbole, which is exaggeration, and sound devices to create art with words. Think about this thing feeding itself at a tank. So perhaps it is personification. Maybe it isn't human, but it is feeding itself at a tank. It moves quickly. It goes between mountains. It chases itself downhill. It is powerful. It makes loud noises. It is on time. I have had students say a river, because a river could cut through mountains and maybe make a loud bubbling brook kind of sound and stop when it gets to its ocean or sea. I've heard students say the wind. A car, thinking more about feeding itself at a tank and traveling. But none of these are correct. So here's a little bit of history. You may remember from social studies that in 1869, about 4 years after the end of the Civil War, the Transcontinental Railway was connected in Promontory Point, Utah, where the Union Pacific and the Central Pacific came together. Emily Dickinson is supposed to have published this poem in 1891. That is 22 years after the Transcontinental Railroad. Before the railroad, the horse was the main transportation. Like we would get mail with the Pony Express. When the train began to be used, people were amazed by the power and size of the train. They also called it the Iron Horse. Emily Dickinson wanted her readers to think of a horse. However, it is a metaphor and personification that lasts the whole poem. This thing laps miles, feeds itself at a tank, is prodigious, goes between mountains, tunnels, makes a loud sound when going downhill, chases itself downhill, the front of something long followed quickly by the end of the long line, like a snake. Makes a loud breaking sound like thunder, Boanerges, as it stops right on time at its station, stable. The Railway Train. This is the title of the poem. Dickinson wanted to highlight the beast that was like the horse, but had replaced it. Here's a little bit about sound devices in this poem. The poem has 4 lines in each stanza. Remember, a stanza is a paragraph in poetry. If you count the syllables, each line seems to be 8, and then 6, and then 8, And then 6. I like to see it lap the miles and lick the valleys up. If you know about rhythm in poetry, it seems to be sets of unstressed and stressed syllables. An unstressed syllable is where we don't put emphasis on that sound, and then a stressed one is where we do. So in the first line, I is unstressed, I, and then we give more power to like, or we stress it there. I like. Then it is 2 is unstressed, and C is stressed. So it's I like to see. So it's almost like we draw back on the unstressed and we go more forward and louder on the stressed syllables. So that actually creates a rhythm in the poem, unstressed, stressed, and that happens 4 times on that line. If you read it the way she wrote it, those unstressed, stressed syllables, which are called I ams, it sounds like this. I like to see it lap the miles and lick the valleys up, and stop to feed itself at tanks and then prodigious step around a pile of mountains and supercilious pier in shanties by the sides of roads and then a quarry pair to fit its sides and crawl between complaining all the while in horrid hooting stanza then chase itself downhill and neigh like bow and nerges then punctual as a star stop docile and omnipotent at its unstable door. So with that rhythm of the words, that is a specific meter that she wrote it in, that's what it's called. You can now hear the words sounding like a train. Chugga, 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 chugga. So question time about this poem and some things we reviewed and that you've already learned about before. But with this poem, what does Dickinson describe over the course of the whole poem? A, the different parts of a train's journey. B, the different parts that make up a train. C, the different mountains a train travels through. Or D, the reasons why a train is making a journey. So it would be A, the different parts of a train's journey. So if you got that, then you are correct. Why might have Dickinson described the railway train as feeding itself? A, to demonstrate that the train did not have an owner to feed it. B, to show the reader that the train was feeling hungry. C, to make the train seem like an animal that could think and act for itself. Or D, to explain that the train was able to eat food. So think about your answer there. And the answer is C, to make the train seem like an animal that could think and act for itself. Dickinson wanted this poem to seem like a horse, but it was really a metaphor for the horse. The structure of this poem is one long sentence. What might this syntax represent about the train? So as a poet writes, he or she is making choices the entire time about what words he or she is using, what figurative language, what sound devices, what the meter is. So what does the structure of the poem say about the train? A, that it took a long and winding journey without many breaks. B, that it was very long and made up of many train cars. C, that it stopped often on its way to its destination. Or D, that it was probably very tired by the time it reached its destination. And I believe she wrote it the way that she did to A, make it look like it took a long and winding journey without many breaks. The train could go a longer distance faster than the horse. There seems to be an A-B pattern to the rhyme scheme. In poetry, you should have learned about how on the end of each line, you're looking to see if it has a rhyme scheme or if it's free verse. And we do that by giving the rhyming words letters. This seems like an A-B pattern, but many words on the line breaks don't rhyme exactly. Here's an example: step and up, peer and pair, while and hill, star and door. What do we call this? A, alliteration, B, common rhyme, C, slant rhyme, or D, consonants? So when something rhymes but not exactly, you should have chosen C, slant rhyme. If you did, then you are correct. What is the sound device used with like, lap, lick, and star, stop, stable? We're hearing that L sound repeat in a line and the S sound repeat in a line. I like to see it lap the miles and lick the valleys up. Stop, docile and omnipotent at its own stable door. A, assonance, B, consonants, C, slant rhyme, or D, alliteration? So we call that same repeating sound at the beginning alliteration. Consonants is also a repeating sound, but not just at the beginning. That consonant repeating sound can be at the beginning, middle, and end of words. Omnipotent means all-powerful. What other words in the poem also represent power? A, docile, B, Boanerges, C, punctual, and D, prodigious. You should have chosen B, Boanerges, and D, prodigious. Docile means calm, so it would not go with powerful. And punctual means that it's obedient and on time. So the train she represents in two ways: being docile and playful, like when it's chasing itself downhill and it stops calmly, it can be put to rest, but in movement, it can also be very powerful, making a sound like Boanerges or making prodigious step. Okay, if you want to review more poetry and terms, you could go to joinmyquiz.com if you have access to the internet and a device, and you could type in 634812. This is free, and the code should be good until about May 6th. But if you were wanting a little bit of an extra challenge and had time, you are welcome to go to joinmyquiz.com on quizzes and punch in 634812. And that's all in this review lesson of Emily Dickinson's poem, The Railway Train. Thank you.